Good morning, everyone. This is Card Stamping with Clara, and I'm Clara. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator coming to you from North Carolina. I have another set of cards this week. I hope you'll enjoy these. I've enjoyed making them and have come up with some things that actually surprised me. So I'm going to show you the card that we're going to get to make today, and that is this happy birthday card. And it's done in the blueberry bushel and some DSP from the Pressed Petals DSP package. And on the inside it says, hope your day brings just what it should, happiness, health, and everything good, with a little rose down in the bottom. So that's the card we're going to be making today. I'm going to set it aside and we'll talk about the others first. And also about the set that we're going to be making it from. I'm going to show you that so you can kind of get an idea of where all these other cards came from. The stamp set that I'm using is the Painted Glass, and it's got some bold sentiments. It's got thank you with deepest sympathy, have a beautiful birthday, and a reason to celebrate. It's got this medallion that you can stamp. It's got a rose, a butterfly, and a little bird. In addition to that, I am going to use the happy birthday sentiment from this itty bitty birthday set because it just fit my card a little bit better, the one that I was making. I'm going to use that one for the front. And then I'm going to use this the sentiment for the inside, which is this, hope your day brings just what it should, happiness, health, and everything good. And this is one of my go-to special celebrations sets that it basically just gives you a lot of different kinds of sentiments for the inside. So not all the stamp sets have sentiments for the inside, but I really like this one, and these basic sets with lots of different words and what have you makes it a little bit easier. We're only going to use one die and one punch today. The die set is the stained glass thinlits dies, and I only have a little piece of magnetic sheet here left for this one, and so I'm going to kind of show you piece by piece so you can see what comes in this set. This is the piece that we're going to be using for the card I'm making today, and I just call it the long railing kind of piece. I'm not really sure what the proper terminology for that is. And you can cut out your butterflies. You can cut out a rose. This will make a fancy kind of window, I guess would be the best way to put it. And we can make an arch over a window and some other things that looks like stained glass. And here's a half of a dome is what I'm trying to say. And then the last little piece here that I've got is this little bird. So there's several pieces in this set, and you can use them in lots of different ways. Okay, the first card, other than the one we're making today, I used the Have a Beautiful Birthday sentiment. Made lots of these butterflies. I colored them with my blends, and I also used vellum. I stamped them, and then I colored them on the back, and I used the Sizzix adhesive to glue them together onto a solid piece of white, Whisper White, and cut it out so that I would have a nice background for the butterfly itself. And then I used the cracked paint stamp to make this background. And in order to get this where it wasn't stamped, I used a piece of Post-it tape to cover it up. So that's basically how I did this card. And it says awesome at any age, and I put a little butterfly down the corner. So then I made a sympathy card. This one says, with deepest sympathy. That's another one of the sentiments. And I also put a butterfly on this one. And you can see the design that I use, those dies to make this particular window. And also I put foil, gold foil in behind it, so that it would be, you know, an accent where it would shine through and look real pretty. So that's how I got this one. And I got a little creative and used that corner piece here in the upper corner. And it just says, know that love, prayers, and caring surround you today. So that's another card. Made a thank you card out of this one. This one is the medallion that I just showed you that I stamped. I stamped it onto the pineapple punch. And then I used the embossing powder. Let me say that. Not the embossing folder, but I used gold embossing powder and to get this pretty shiny effect. And I also used a piece of vellum on this one. Of course, this is also embossed in the gold. And on the inside, it says, thoughtful, kind, generous, that's you. And I embossed a little gold rose down in the bottom and put a piece of gold underneath the sentiment. So, there's a thank you card out of it. This one, I didn't put a sentiment on the front. I didn't really feel like I had room. But I took those same pieces and cut them out. And I'll show you later, I use the Sizzix adhesive because it just works better for me to stick these things down than to try to use glue. You can use glue, but you got to be really careful if you do, or you'll have glue all over the place. So I made the window, and frankly, the bird, the dove, is being discontinued. But if you've got a dove, or if you've got something else you want to put in the window, a cross or something, you know, you could put anything in there. So I wanted to use the little dove that I had. That's the reason I got it, was for such things as this, and I really like it. So this one says, with deepest sympathy. And I also layered it with black, which picks up on the black that is stamped, that the dove is stamped with, and it kind of brings everything all together. All right. Here's one that I did on the soft sea foam. I cut out the dome. I seem to be struggling for words this morning. I cut that out twice, and then I turned it in a vertical position and brought those together to make this pretty circle. Then I took the little rose, stamped it, and embossed it in gold. And this says, a reason to celebrate. And this is done in the shaded spruce, with the shaded spruce cardstock underneath the soft sea foam. And on the inside, rejoicing in his grace. And this one has a little dove in the set. So that was the way I finished that one. This one is a miss you card. I used the Highland Heather and the Gorgeous Grape and the basic black on this one. And you can see where I cut out the window there again. And a little kitty. We have a kitty punch and a stamp set, which worked really nice for this. This little kitty will sit right in that window. And I used my punch and cut it in half to make the dome to go above this and write Miss You on it. So that's how I got that. And this says, far apart but close at heart. So, and this last one was one that I made some time ago, and I ran across it and I thought, well, you know, I think I'm going to show them this one, even though it's not one I just made. This was out of some DSP that we used to have, but you could use any kind that you like. And I put a solid piece underneath it that matched, and then put the railing on top of it so that it would show on top. And then I used, this is from the Stitched labels set, I believe, and put 2 or 3 little accents of the red on it, and on the inside it's got that same sentiment that I like so good, and a little heart. So I think we got several things from this set this week. So let's get at it and get this card made, and you can see how I put it together, and we'll talk about it as we go. We've got some of the things are already prepared, and it'll make it a little bit faster that way. All right, let me kind of get them straightened out here, and then we'll talk about each one. Of course, we always have the basic card base, and for me, I usually use the Whisper White, the thick Whisper White, which is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, scored at 4.25 inches. And this one, I went ahead and glued the inside of it because it was just easier to make my picture that way for this week. The same sentiment and the same rows, and all you have to do is just stamp it on this and glue the crumb cake. This is crumb cake in color, and the blueberry bushel underneath it. The crumb cake in this instance is 3 3/4 by 5. The blueberry bushel is 4 by 5 1/4. And that's what makes your layers work out balanced and what have you. All right, so all we have to really do is make the front of the card. For the front of the card, I have another piece of blueberry bushel. This one is also 4 by 5 1/4. Then I have a piece of the DSP that comes from the pressed petals, and I might say this is a beautiful set of paper. It's got some pinks in it, it's got some blues, there's a little bit of yellow, and I just really like it. It's sort of, to me, it has kind of a country touch to it, so maybe that's why I like it, but for me, it works. So that will go on there in a minute. I also cut a piece of blueberry bushel that is, well, it's kind of it's not quite 1 7/8. It's a little bit more than 1 3/4. So somewhere right there, it will work. And then it's 3 3/4 long or wide, as it's going to be in this case, like that. When I get it put on, it'll fit. I stamped a little butterfly, and I went ahead and put some little accents on it. Some little jewels. And probably what you'll need for this comes from the new set that is the bowl peacock. Shoot, I drew a blank. I'll write it in my notes, but it's a little set of jewels. And one of the colors is the blueberry bushel. I didn't have any of those, so I just used some that I had, which are very close. But if you need some that are the blueberry bushel and but it's the proud peacock, I believe, set of jewels. But you won't have any trouble finding it. I'll make a link to it and what have you. I stamped that in the blueberry bushel as well. I cut out a railing, and what I did to get this, and I haven't, if you'll notice, not everything is punched out. And the reason I didn't do that is because when I peel it off, a lot of those will come out. If there's 1 or 2 left, I'll clean that up before we put it on. But the way I do this is I just take a piece of this Sizzix adhesive, peel it off, put my crumb cake on top of that, and then run it through the die as a unit with the crumb cake on top, and then it comes out like this, and you'll have the coating on the back to stick it to whatever you need to, and it works so well. Unfortunately, Stampin' Up! is no longer carrying the adhesive sheets, and I think that's a shame, but you know, they didn't ask me, so anyway, you can get them at places like Amazon where you get most anything. I use this punch, which is the Pretty Labels punch, to get the label for the front. I cut one out of the crumb cake, which has no sentiment on it. And I cut one that has happy birthday. And I suggest to you, always stamp first. If you've got something on a little square, say something like 3 by 3, a scrap of any kind will do, as long as it's big enough. And then when you get ready to cut it out, you see what you do is you can slide it. Here's a piece of scrap. You can slide it in like that, and you can adjust your sentiment so that it's sitting right in the center of the label. Now, you can pop the label out first and try to hit the center with the stamp, which I find to be way more difficult. It's just, well, just like this one right here. I don't know if it'll reach or not. That's not going to work. But anyway, just stamp it first, and then you can center it and pop it out, and it's just real easy. So this is another good standby punch for a pretty little label to use for lots of things. All right, let's start gluing this thing together, and we'll be done in just a minute. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the DSP to the blueberry bushel. And I'm not going to put too much glue on this, just enough to hold it. Sometimes I think if you put too much on it, your cards get kind of stiff. And I try to avoid that if I can. Put a little bit down in the corners just to make sure it catches all the way around. Okay. You know what? I just realized, I'm sorry, I told you wrong about this piece of DSP. It is not 3 3/4. It is 3 1/2 wide. And instead of being 5, it's 4 3/4. I don't know, it just slipped my mind because I have a bigger border around this than I usually do. And you know, generally it's 3 3/4 by 5. But today I went down 1/4 farther so that I could get a broader kind of border around it. So I apologize for that. I'll make sure it's right in my notes. You can always cut it down. Thankfully, I didn't tell you that it needed to be, you know, smaller. But you can always cut them down if you need to. All right. So I think that looks balanced and about as good as I can get it. I'll put it that way. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this to this piece. All right. This is where I was telling you it works so well. I had already trimmed it for the proper size. But you see how many of those are popping right out? Okay. Those little crumb cake colored pieces. All right. You do have to look at this though. And there was one of all of those that didn't come right out. So I'm going to grab my tweezers here and kind of poke it out. Okay. Now then. You do kind of have to keep this straight as you can. And try to hit the center as close as you can. Let's see if that's about right. All right. I left just a smidgen hanging over in case. Sometimes cutting it exactly is, you can cut it a tiny bit too short, and then you wish you had you know, lift a little bit. So there you see, I just trimmed off the extra. And that looks really nice. And you don't have to worry about glue being anywhere, especially when you've got something that has got as fine cut out lines as this does. Like I said, you don't have to have it, but it sure is nice. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to center this, put a little glue on the back. This is the blueberry bushel again. Let's see if that's about right. I hope it is. You know me, I've got to get it where I can kind of look at it head on in order to tell if it's where it's supposed to be, and I think that is. Okay. Now then, the way you get this border around the happy birthday is by cutting this in half. If you've never done this before, it's not hard. You just cut down the center of the crumb cake in this case. And let me suggest to you, do not put the glue on this piece, because what you're going to do is you're going to glue it this way. So put the glue around the edge of your label, just a little bit. You don't want too much, just enough to hold it. And start by holding it so you've got a border around, because you don't want to get the glue smeared all over, if you can help it anyway. And that makes a pretty border. Now, it's a little bit sticky right here, so I'm going to wipe off my fingers. All right. Put a little bit more on the other side now. Seems like you always get a little bit that gushes out along when you're doing this, but that's why I say you start by holding your piece, your border piece out a little bit. Wait a minute. I might not have held that one out quite far enough. I hope I don't have too much glue on it. Anyway, you try to move it till you kind of get it balanced as best you can. Now, if you see what happens, you got this little valley in the back, which doesn't matter. Sometimes you'll have a, whoops, sorry. You might need to trim just a tiny little bit or round it up. You don't have to. If you're really good at it, you don't necessarily need to do this, but sometimes if I've got a little bit that hangs out, I just trim it up. So that works for that. And before I glue this to the back, I am going to reach over here and get my eraser, my glue eraser. That's what this is. I don't want any goop on my label that might have got there by accident. So I will run that over it. You don't have to if you don't get any on it, but I thought maybe I had a little tad there, so. Sometimes I just have to clean up my mess and go again. All right, that works. And now we're going to reach over and get some dimensionals, and I'm going to put it on the back of this. And this is the first video for you to see. These are dimensionals. They come in a little pack. And I'm going to use a pick your tool to pop some of them up. And this is what they look like. So most people if they've been around stamping at any time, they know about dimensionals. It just helps to set things up a little bit off of your card, makes it have a little dimension. They're really easy. They're just, they're like the adhesive sheets. Once you remove the protective covering, then you can put them down and they will stick right to your card. You don't have to add glue. So these are the little coverings that comes off. And having a little tool like this, pick your tool, really does make it easier. You can take off these real quick. And you can space as many or as few as you want to on this. It's up to you. Now, I'm going to try to put this in the center. This little, I should have known that little piece would hitchhike. All right. I'm going to be looking from side to side and top to bottom before this is sealed down good, because if you press it down before you get it centered, it's pretty much going to be there. And I seem to be having a little trouble here. Maybe over just a tiny little bit. Okay. All right. I think that's going to be pretty good. Then we're going to take this piece, now that it is finished except for the butterfly and a couple of the little jewels, and we'll go ahead and glue it onto the card base. And especially if you've done the inside first like I did this time, make sure that you get it turned right, because if you turn it over like this and you open it up, not so much fun, I promise you. I've done that a few times. It doesn't take long to figure out you need to check though. So, here we go. All right, now we'll have just about 1/8 of an inch border all the way around here. Put that in a little bit. All right, now then, I'm going to kind of fold my butterfly up just a tiny little bit. And I used, this is like the dimensionals, except these are little strips that you can purchase from Stampin' Up. And for this butterfly, I thought this little strip would be perfect. It just supports the whole center and it keeps the wings free. So we're not gonna put it exactly where the one was, because the flower is a little different on this one. So I'm gonna sit him right there where he's, or she's landed on a flower. And then I'm going to take 3 of these little jewels, and like I said, the Proud Peacock stamp set, suite, whatever you want to call it, has a set of these with it, and you can buy them separate. So we're going to put maybe one here. And we might put one like kind of right there. And I'm going to spread this one out just a little bit more than the other one. And I just got an extra one out in case I dropped one or something. Usually you just try to put 3 on because of the nature of what appeals to the eye. 3 seems to be better than 4 in these instances, and that's what is recommended. So, all right, they're all finished. I think it turns out pretty nice, and like I said, I think it has a bit of a country flair to it. So I'm going to make several more of these, and it's going to be one of my favorites, I think. All right. I need to remind you that what is going on at Stampin' Up! Right now is the bonus days. The month of July to the 1st of August, for every $50 that you purchase, you will earn $5 credit so that you can put it towards a purchase in August. If you purchase $50, you also can get a stamp pad from me, a Memento Tuxedo Black stamp pad that you'll need for using with the blends. Or if you've got a stamp pad, you can earn I'll give you a refill for it, which makes it a little bit better deal yet. The new catalog for Christmas is going to be coming out in the next month or a little more now. And we're going to get a peek look at it next week and hopefully be able to order some things. So that's always exciting to see the Christmas stuff. It seems like it's a little bit early, but it's always to the last day to get the Christmas cards made. So there might be something really pretty in that. I know some of the ladies have already seen some of the Christmas things that went to on stage, but I have not. So I'll be showing those to you as soon as possible. And always remember to use the host code if you would. If you purchase, this is the host code, if you purchase under $150. And that helps me, and I'd appreciate it if you'd push subscribe, and that way you'll know when I get my video up each week. Hopefully I'm back on track this week, and things are getting back to normal again. So we'll do our very best to get a video to you once a week, and have a new set of cards to give you some new ideas. So hope you have a wonderful week. Hope you've had some good days, and I hope it's not too hot where you're at, but it sure is hot here. Even in North Carolina, I can't imagine what it is in some of the southern states, the really southern states. But nevertheless, we won't complain. Not too much anyway, I'll say. I'm just not much of a hot weather person. But the good Lord bless you and keep you, and I thank you for your time, and I will be coming back to visit with you again next week, hopefully. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.